Hello and welcome to Lotus Light Teachings. Here, we explore timeless Buddhist wisdom to help you navigate life's challenges, unlock your highest potential, and cultivate inner peace. Today's topic is, are you living or just existing? We'll uncover 10 transformative Buddhist principles that can help you break free from limitations and step into the life you were truly meant to live. And stay with me until the end. I have a powerful bonus lesson that just might shift your entire perspective on life. Let's begin. Take a moment and ask yourself, are you truly living, or are you just existing? Most people wake up, go through the motions, get distracted, procrastinate, and repeat. Day after day, year after year. They know they need to change but never do. And before they realize it, time has slipped away. The Buddha once said, "Pain is certain, but suffering is optional." Most of us unknowingly choose suffering, not because we want to, but because we avoid the discomfort of change. We stay stuck in unhealthy habits, negative thoughts, and fear of failure. But here's the truth. No one is coming to save you. If you don't fix yourself now, you may never get another chance. The good news? You have the power to transform your life, starting today. In this video, we'll explore 10 powerful Buddhist principles that will help you reclaim your focus, overcome self-doubt, and step into your highest potential. And at the end, I'll share one life-changing bonus lesson, a profound truth that could shift how you see your entire existence. Are you ready? Let's dive in. What if I told you that the biggest obstacle in your life isn't your circumstances, your past, or other people? It's you? Yes. The way you think, the habits you cling to, and the fears you refuse to face. They are the real chains holding you back. Most people live in distractions, mindlessly scrolling, watching TV, waiting for the right time to take action. But life doesn't wait. Time keeps moving. Think about this. How many opportunities have you missed because you were afraid to take a risk? How many times have you said, "I'll do it tomorrow," and never did? How much longer will you allow fear, self-doubt, and bad habits to control your life? The Buddha taught that true freedom isn't about escaping responsibility. It's about mastering yourself. That's what this journey is about. So now ask yourself, are you willing to break free? 1. Discipline is the key to true freedom. I remember a time when I believed that freedom meant doing whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. No alarms, no strict schedules, no obligations. Just pure, unfiltered spontaneity. It sounded perfect, like the kind of life people dream about. But what I didn't realize then was that freedom without discipline is just another form of chaos. There's a reason why the most successful people in the world, athletes, artists, entrepreneurs, live by routines and rituals. They don't rely on motivation. They rely on discipline. And trust me, it took me a long time to understand that. There was a phase in my life when I couldn't stick to anything. I would start a project, get excited for a week, and then abandon it when things got tough. I would set goals, read more, exercise daily, wake up early. But by the third or fourth day, I was already making excuses. It was always, "I'll do it tomorrow," or "It's not the right time." But guess what? Tomorrow never came. I used to envy people who seemed effortlessly disciplined. The ones who woke up at 5 a.m., who had their whole day planned, who followed through on every promise they made to themselves. I thought they had some secret superpower that I lacked. But then, one day, I stumbled upon a story that changed my perspective forever. There was an archer, known across the land for his unshakable precision. People marveled at his ability to hit his target every single time. One day, a young man approached him and asked, "What is your secret? How do you never miss?" The archer smiled and said, "Come back tomorrow at dawn, and I will show you." The next morning, the young man arrived and found the archer standing by a great oak tree. The archer handed him a bow and said, "Shoot that apple on the branch." The young man, confident in his own ability, pulled back the string and let the arrow fly. It missed by a mile. The archer then blindfolded him and said, "Now try again." The young man laughed. "That's impossible. How can I hit the target if I can't even see it?" The archer removed the blindfold and looked him in the eye. That is how most people live their lives. They have no focus, no direction. They wake up each day without a plan, hoping to hit their target, but they don't even know where it is. That story hit me like a lightning bolt. I realized that I had been living my life blindfolded. I had dreams, sure. I had aspirations, but I had no real structure, no routine, no discipline to guide me there. I was hoping to succeed without putting in the work. That's when I made a decision. I would no longer rely on motivation. I would build discipline brick by brick. I started small, waking up at the same time every day, reading 10 pages of a book instead of scrolling on my phone, committing to just 5 minutes of meditation. The changes were subtle at first, almost invisible, but over time they compounded. And then something incredible happened. I felt freer than ever before, because when you have discipline, you don't waste energy making the same decisions over and over again. You don't negotiate with yourself every morning about whether or not you should go to the gym. You just go. You don't wait until you feel like working. You just do the work. It's funny how the very thing that feels like restriction is actually what unlocks your greatest freedom. Think about it. An archer doesn't have the freedom to hit his mark unless he has trained his body and mind relentlessly. A pianist doesn't have the freedom to play with emotion unless she has practiced scales 1,000 times. A writer doesn't have the freedom to express ideas fluently unless he has spent years mastering the craft. True freedom isn't doing whatever you want in the moment. True freedom is having the ability to choose long-term success over short-term pleasure. So now, I want you to ask yourself, what is one habit you need to refine today to build your future self? Maybe it's waking up an hour earlier. Maybe it's cutting back on distractions. Maybe it's committing to daily meditation, journaling, or learning something new every day. Whatever it is, start now. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready. Now, because the truth is, discipline is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. And once you build it, there's no limit to what you can achieve. So what's your target? And more importantly, are you willing to train for it? 2. Face your inner demons before they destroy you. There was a time in my life when I thought running away from my problems would make them disappear. I convinced myself that if I ignored the discomfort long enough, it would simply fade into the background, like a song you eventually stop hearing. But if there's one truth I've learned, it's this: the things you avoid don't go away, they grow. I remember hearing a story once about a traveler who stumbled upon a cave, rumored to house a terrifying monster. Villagers warned him to stay away. Many who entered had never returned. But the traveler, filled with curiosity, decided to see for himself. Armed with only a small lantern, he stepped inside. As he ventured deeper, the growls of the beast echoed through the cavern, sending chills down his spine. His instinct screamed at him to turn back. But instead of running, he kept moving forward, allowing the dim glow of his lantern to illuminate the space around him. And then, something unexpected happened. When he finally reached the end of the cave, he found no monster at all. Just shadows, distorted figures cast by his own flickering light. The demon he had feared was nothing more than his own perception of fear itself. That story stuck with me. Such a simple yet profound metaphor for the way we live our lives. Most of us carry our own caves within us. Places we're too afraid to explore, corners of our past or our psyche that we leave untouched, hoping the monsters lurking there will never find us. But fear doesn't shrink in the darkness. It expands. I once knew a man who, by all outward appearances, had everything figured out. He was confident, charismatic, always the loudest voice in the room. But beneath that carefully curated exterior was a different reality, one that few ever got to see. He was terrified of failure. He never took risks. He avoided situations where he wasn't guaranteed success. He built a fortress around his insecurities, reinforcing it with arrogance and perfectionism. And for a while it worked. People admired him, envied him even. But life has a way of exposing the cracks in your foundation when you least expect it. Opportunities came his way, chances to grow, to lead, to create something meaningful. But he turned them all down, not because he wasn't capable, but because stepping into the unknown meant confronting the fear he had spent years suppressing. I watched as those fears slowly consumed him. They didn't arrive with a sudden explosion but crept in, day by day, like water seeping into the cracks of a dam, until one day the dam broke. He lost everything, not because he wasn't talented or intelligent, but because he was unwilling to face himself. And the saddest part? He never even realized he was the one standing in his own way. I've seen this same pattern in so many people, including myself. For years, I avoided difficult conversations because I was afraid of confrontation. I stayed in situations that made me unhappy because I feared change. I ignored parts of myself that needed healing because acknowledging them meant admitting I wasn't as strong as I pretended to be. But life kept bringing me back to the same lessons, over and over again. The same toxic cycles, the same regrets, the same disappointments, until one day I asked myself, what am I actually running from? I sat in silence and let the answer rise to the surface, without pushing it away. And you know what I found? The monster in my cave wasn't as terrifying as I had imagined. It was just old wounds I had never given myself permission to heal. It was fear disguised as logic. It was self-doubt masquerading as practicality. And the moment I stopped running, the moment I shined light on the things I had been avoiding, they lost their power over me. The truth is, your fears are only as strong as the darkness you keep them in. Whatever you're avoiding, the conversation you know you need to have, the change you know you need to make, the truth you've buried under layers of distraction, is not as scary as you think. Because the longer you run, the bigger the monster becomes. So here's my challenge for you. Sit with your fear today. Don't numb it with social media or work or distractions. Don't push it away. Look at it. Name it. Understand it. Because the monster in your mind isn't real. It's just a shadow waiting to be seen. And once you face it, you'll realize you were never actually trapped. The cage was never locked. The key was in your hands all along. Now tell me, what is one truth you've been avoiding? And what will you do today to finally face it? 3. Speak your truth or be controlled. I remember the first time I bit my tongue when I wanted to speak up. It was in a meeting years ago when I had an idea that I knew could change the course of our project. But as I opened my mouth to share it, I hesitated. What if they think it's stupid? What if I sound too ambitious? What if I step on someone's toes? So I stayed silent. And then, a few minutes later, someone else voiced a similar idea. One that was met with enthusiasm and praise. I sat there, nodding along, pretending it didn't bother me. But deep down, I felt a small part of me shrink. That wasn't the last time I swallowed my words. I did it in friendships when I disagreed but didn't want to create tension. I did it in relationships when I wanted to express my needs but feared being too much. I did it on social media when I curated a version of myself that felt more acceptable than authentic. And the more I silenced myself, the more I felt like a stranger in my own life. The irony is, we think staying quiet protects us from rejection, from judgment, from discomfort. But in reality, it does the opposite. Every time we suppress our truth, we give away a piece of ourselves. And over time, those pieces add up. One day, I came across a quote from the Buddha. 3 things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. That hit me, because the truth, our truth, always finds a way out. Either we express it, or it festers inside us, showing up in ways we don't expect. In resentment, in anxiety, in a quiet, lingering dissatisfaction that whispers, "This isn't who you really are." Social media has made this even harder. We've created a world where approval is currency. We filter our photos, refine our words, tailor our opinions to be more likable. But at what cost? I've seen people lose themselves trying to fit into an idea of success, beauty, or happiness that isn't their own. They become characters in someone else's script, playing the role of the perfect parent, the hustle-driven entrepreneur, the effortlessly cool traveler, all while burying the messy, complicated, beautiful truth of who they really are. But here's the thing: if you have to hide parts of yourself to be loved, then that love isn't real. If you have to perform to be accepted, then the acceptance isn't for you. It's for the illusion of you. I won't lie to you. Speaking your truth is hard. It will make some people uncomfortable. Some may walk away, but that's okay, because the ones who stay, the ones who see you, who respect your voice, who embrace your authenticity, those are the people worth keeping. So ask yourself, what truth have you been suppressing? And what would happen if you finally set it free? 5. Your mind is your greatest weapon, sharpen it. There was a time when I thought intelligence was something you were either born with or without, like a genetic lottery ticket that determined your success before you even had a chance to play. I used to admire people who spoke eloquently, who could remember obscure facts, who could solve problems effortlessly. I thought they were just naturally gifted, while the rest of us had to settle for whatever abilities we were dealt. But then, I came across an old samurai proverb: a warrior does not fear his enemy, he fears an unsharpened sword. It struck me because I realized something. Our mind is our sword, and like any weapon, it dulls with neglect and sharpens with use. I saw this firsthand when I met an old professor who had the sharpest mind I'd ever encountered. He could quote entire passages from books he'd read decades ago, recall conversations from years prior with astonishing accuracy, and, most impressively, was still learning, still evolving. One day, I asked him, "How do you keep your mind so sharp?" He smiled and said, "I sharpen it every day, just like a blade." Most people let their minds rust. That stuck with me, because when I looked around, I saw exactly what he meant. Most of us let our minds rust. We drown in distractions, mindless scrolling, endless notifications, background noise that clutters our thoughts. We multitask so much that we never truly focus. Our attention span has become so fragile that we can barely sit through a 5-minute conversation without reaching for our phones. And yet, we wonder why we feel anxious, scattered, unfocused. I know because I was that person. I used to wake up and immediately check my phone, bombarding my brain with emails, news, and social media updates before I even took my first breath of morning air. I'd switch between tabs, skim articles without absorbing anything, half listen to conversations while thinking about my next task. My mind was cluttered, restless, dulled. And then, one day, I decided to do something radical. I stopped. I put my phone away in the mornings. I started reading books instead of social media feeds. I carved out time for meditation, even if it was just 5 minutes. I practiced deep work, focusing on one task at a time, fully immersed with no distractions. The results? Everything changed. My thoughts became clearer. My ability to focus, once shattered by constant noise, became stronger. Conversations became deeper, ideas flowed more freely, and, perhaps most importantly, I felt a sense of inner calm that I hadn't felt in years. Because here's the truth: an untrained mind is a liability. A sharpened mind is a weapon. And in today's world, where distractions are endless, the ability to focus is not just a skill, it's a superpower. So, ask yourself, what weakens your focus the most? And what will you do today to reclaim your mind? Because in the end, the sharpest minds don't just happen. They are forged, honed, and sharpened, one intentional moment at a time. 6. Let go or be trapped. I once read about an experiment with a group of monkeys. Scientists placed a banana inside a jar with a narrow opening, just big enough for the monkey to slip its hand in, but too small to pull out while gripping the banana. One by one, the monkeys reached in, grabbed the banana, and then refused to let go. They could have freed themselves at any moment, but they wouldn't release their grip. They remained trapped, not because of the jar, but because of their own unwillingness to let go. I laughed when I first heard the story, until I realized how painfully true it was for so many of us. Because how often do we do the same thing? How often do we cling to things that no longer serve us? Relationships, past regrets, identities we've outgrown. Simply because letting go feels too uncomfortable? For years, I held onto a friendship that I knew was toxic. It wasn't always bad, but over time, it became one-sided. I was constantly giving, constantly excusing, constantly justifying behavior that left me feeling drained. But the thought of walking away terrified me. What if I'm overreacting? What if I end up alone? What if I regret it? So I stayed. And every time I felt the weight of that friendship pull me down, I told myself, it's not that bad. But then, one day, I had a realization. The pain of staying was greater than the fear of leaving. So I let go. And just like that, the weight lifted. It wasn't just about that friendship. It was about everything I had been clinging to out of fear. Old expectations, outdated dreams, even the version of myself that no longer aligned with who I wanted to become. The Buddha once said, "You only lose what you cling to," and I think about that often, because we all have something we're holding on to, something we think is keeping us safe but is actually keeping us stuck. An identity we've outgrown but are too afraid to shed. A relationship that's familiar but no longer fulfilling. A past mistake that we replay in our minds, refusing to forgive ourselves. But here's what I've learned. Letting go isn't losing. It's gaining space for something new. An eagle raised in captivity doesn't know what it means to fly. It sees the sky but doesn't believe it's meant for it. It clings to the ground, even when the cage is gone. But the moment it realizes it was never meant to stay small, it takes flight. And so can you. So, ask yourself, what's keeping you caged? And if you let go of just one thing today, one thought, one fear, one attachment, what kind of freedom would you gain? 7. The illusion of one day. There was a time in my life when I lived entirely in the future. I told myself that one day I would start working out consistently. One day I would finally write that book. One day I would take that trip I'd been dreaming about for years. But one day was always somewhere out there, just beyond my reach. I used to believe that once I had more time, more money, more clarity, then I'd start living the life I wanted. I thought happiness was waiting for me at some future milestone, just a little further down the road. But here's the thing. The horizon never gets closer. I first realized this when I read about a traveler who spent his life chasing the horizon, convinced that if he just kept walking, he would eventually reach it. But no matter how far he went, the horizon stayed just as distant as before. And that's how most of us live. We think fulfillment is somewhere in the future. After the promotion, after we lose weight, after we meet the right person. But the truth is, if you're always waiting, you're never living. I learned this lesson the hard way. I had a friend who always talked about writing a novel. She had incredible ideas, stories that were vivid, compelling, alive. But she kept saying, "I'll start when I have more time." Year after year passed and life happened. Jobs, relationships, responsibilities. Until one day, she confided in me, "I don't think I'll ever write it." Not because she couldn't, but because she had waited too long, and the dream had faded. That terrified me, because I saw myself in her words. How many things had I postponed, thinking I'd have time later? How many moments had I let slip through my fingers, assuming I could reclaim them someday? But life doesn't wait. So one day, I made a decision. I would stop waiting for one day and start now. I started writing, even when I felt uninspired. I booked the trip, even when the timing wasn't perfect. I began exercising, even when I didn't feel ready. And something incredible happened. The future I had been waiting for wasn't somewhere far away. It was right here in this moment. I used to think I needed more time, but what I really needed was to stop making excuses. So now, I have a question for you. What have you been delaying? Maybe it's learning a skill, pursuing a passion, having a difficult conversation, or taking a risk. Whatever it is, stop waiting. Because one day is an illusion. The only time you truly have is now. 8. Seek meaning, not pleasure. I once read an interview with Jim Carrey where he said, "I wish everyone could get rich and famous and have everything they ever dreamed of, so they can see that it's not the answer." That hit me, because we've all been told a lie. We're told that happiness comes from getting more money, more success, more things. But the more we chase pleasure, the emptier we feel. It's like drinking salt water. It never quenches your thirst. I used to believe that if I just achieved enough, earned enough, experienced enough, I'd feel complete. So I chased after things that looked like happiness, the approval of others, the excitement of new experiences, the rush of checking another box off my list. And for a while it worked. But then I noticed something strange. The highs never lasted. No matter how many achievements I stacked up, I still felt restless. Like I was always searching for something more. But I didn't even know what more meant. Then one day, I heard a story about a man lost in the desert. Dying of thirst, he saw an oasis in the distance. He ran toward it, desperate for relief, only to find that it was a mirage. And then another, and another. No matter how fast he ran, he was never satisfied. That's what chasing pleasure feels like. And I see it everywhere. People scrolling endlessly through social media, searching for a hit of dopamine. People buying things they don't need, hoping it will fill the void. People seeking validation in relationships, careers, external success. Always looking outward instead of inward. But meaning doesn't fade. When I shifted my focus from chasing pleasure to building meaning, everything changed. I started asking myself, what will matter at the end of my life? Not the fleeting highs, but the deep, quiet fulfillment of knowing I contributed something real. I thought about the people I admired, those who left a legacy, not just a resume. They weren't the ones who lived for temporary pleasure. They were the ones who built, who gave, who served something greater than themselves. So I started choosing differently. Instead of chasing distractions, I focused on things that made me grow. Instead of seeking approval, I asked myself, what impact do I want to make? Instead of living for the next moment, I started being present in this one. And you know what? I felt more alive than I ever did when I was just chasing happiness. Because fulfillment isn't found in what you take. It's found in what you give. So ask yourself, are you building something meaningful or just chasing distractions? Because at the end of your life, it won't be the fleeting pleasures that define you. It will be the meaning you created, the lives you touched, and the legacy you left behind. 9. Serve something greater than yourself. There's a story about a man who spent his entire life chasing success. He worked tirelessly, climbing the corporate ladder, accumulating wealth, and gaining status. He thought that the more he achieved, the happier he would be. But when he finally reached the top, when he had everything he thought he wanted, he felt empty. One evening, he was sitting alone in his luxurious home when his neighbor, an elderly man, came over and said, "Do you know the difference between a candle and a wildfire?" The man shook his head. A wildfire consumes everything in its path, destroying whatever it touches. But a candle? A single candle can light thousands of others without losing its flame. That conversation changed him, because for the first time he realized that his life had been a wildfire, burning through goals, achievements, and possessions, but never truly giving anything. He had spent so much time accumulating that he had forgotten what really mattered: contribution. I see this all the time. People chase after personal success, believing that once they have enough, then they'll start giving back. But the truth is, fulfillment doesn't come from what you take. It comes from what you give. Think about the most inspiring people in history: Martin Luther King Jr., Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela. None of them lived for themselves. They found something bigger than their own desires, something worth dedicating their lives to. And in doing so, they changed the world. It's easy to think, I'm just one person. What difference can I make? But the impact of a single act of kindness, a single moment of generosity, can ripple further than you ever imagine. I once read about a teacher who had a student struggling with confidence. One day, she pulled him aside and said, "I believe in you." That boy went on to become a best-selling author. And in an interview years later, he said, "Those 3 words changed my life." You don't have to be a world leader to make a difference. Sometimes, it's as simple as showing up for someone, sharing your knowledge, offering kindness without expecting anything in return. A single candle can light thousands of others without losing its flame. So the question is, how can you positively impact someone's life today? Maybe it's calling a friend who needs support. Maybe it's mentoring someone who looks up to you. Maybe it's simply choosing to be kind in a world that desperately needs it. Whatever it is, start now. Because in the end, the legacy you leave won't be about what you collected, but about the light you shared. 10. Death is your greatest teacher, live accordingly. I used to live as if I had all the time in the world. I would put things off, thinking, I'll do it later. Later to start my passion project. Later to say, I love you. Later to take the risks that scared me. Then one day I lost someone unexpectedly. One moment they were here, laughing, making plans, believing they had years ahead of them. The next they were gone. And that was the first time I truly understood the fragility of life. Most of us live as if we are immortal. We move through life assuming there will always be more time, more chances. But the truth is, we have no idea how many days we have left. The Buddha taught memento mori, a Latin phrase meaning remember that you will die, not as a dark, morbid thought, but as a powerful reminder to live. Think about it. If you knew you had only 1 year left, what would you do differently? Would you finally chase that dream? Would you tell the people you love how much they mean to you? Would you let go of grudges, stop caring about trivial things, and focus on what actually matters? I asked myself this question, and it changed everything. I stopped waiting. I started saying yes to life. I told the people I loved how much I appreciated them. I stopped wasting time on things that didn't align with who I wanted to be. Because the truth is, we don't get to choose how much time we have. But we do get to choose how we spend the time we're given. So now I ask you, what is one thing you must do before you die? Whatever it is, start now. Because someday is not guaranteed. And the only time you truly have is this moment. There's one undeniable truth in life. Everything is impermanent. Your time, your youth, your opportunities. They will not last forever. We often live as if we have all the time in the world. We tell ourselves, one day, I'll do what I love. One day, I'll take care of my health. One day, I'll fix my relationships. But one day is an illusion. If you knew you had only 1 year left to live, how would you spend it? What regrets would you let go of? What dreams would you finally chase? The Buddha taught memento mori. Remember that you will die, not to create fear, but to create urgency. Your time is now. If you've been waiting for permission to start, this is your sign. If you've been afraid of failure, remember the only failure is never trying. If you've been stuck in the past, let go. The future is still unwritten. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need to start. Pick one lesson from today's video and take action today. Even if it's a small step, momentum creates transformation. And before you go, I have one final question for you. What is the one thing you know you need to change, but have been avoiding? Let me know in the comments. Your answer might just inspire someone else on their journey. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like this video. It helps more people find this message. Comment your thoughts. I read every single one. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Lotus Light Teachings for more insights on Buddhist wisdom for a powerful, meaningful life. Thank you for being here. Until next time, keep growing, keep reflecting, and keep walking your path.